are the Q&A for The Hidden Map, and the filmmaker Ani Hovhannissian is right here. We've been chatting. This is coming after the trailer because we're holding back on the film. It's a very important film. I'm sure you could tell from the trailer that this film does, I think, an amazing job, because what you do going back to Turkey and going over places that were Armenian communities just last century, and the way that they've been turned desolate is really powerful. And I found you so brave, and I think the filmmaking is so good here. And honestly, I think the courage to walk up to Turks in their communities and say, "Can you show me where the Armenians lived?" And they say yes. That blew my mind.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for having me. And I'm glad that you were pulled in by the film, because that film is really a journey of my life and of the life of so many others. I mean, we grew up with the stories. I was born here in Fresno, California, to grandparents, all of whom were survivors of the Armenian genocide in 1915 in Ottoman Turkey. And in that time and in those years, these were people who, Armenians have lived there for thousands of years, and it has been Armenia for thousands of years, and they lived and created and thrived. And then in 1915, the Ottoman Empire leaders decided to wipe out the Armenians, this pan-Turkic, pan-Muslim vision where they wanted to wipe out the Armenians who had lived there and whose empires and lands had been for thousands of years until the Ottomans came. And they were the first Christian nation, the Armenians. In 301, they became the first Christian nation in the world. And so Armenians and Turks lived side by side for centuries until they no longer did. And I grew up with the stories of my grandparents and a whole generation of survivors who lost everything and everyone. My grandfather was the sole survivor of 9 brothers and sisters and an entire village of Zitoch. My grandmother, Khunguhi, in Ordu, was taken away and never saw her parents and her siblings again. My other grandfather, Kaspad, saw his mother and baby brother taken away on a death march. And he lived because a Kurd took him in order to make him kind of his servant. And that way, my grandfather, Kaspar, lived and then escaped. And anyway, all of my grandparents and all the survivors of the genocide lived then the rest of their lives in exile because they were spread around the world because there were no more Armenians left in Turkey. That was the plot. They didn't wipe us out completely, but effectively from our lands and from our history, and then spend the rest of their lives in the last century denying that it happened, even though at that time the whole world had accepted that it had happened, and it was in the New York Times, and it was in all the archives, and the governments condemned the Ottoman Empire. But then everyone went back to their own lives, and Armenians were left alone. And I've made a long story, a little long, but and that's not the purpose of this talk, but to say that I grew up with the love and with the pain and with the stories of those people who brought us here, who gave us life inside me. And my grandfather a brave man who defended, woke up every night of his life. I remember when we would be spending the nights in the summers at their modest home in Fresno, screaming from nightmares. And my angelic, beautiful grandmother with long gray hair, never cut and braided, who was the epitome of grace and love, would cry silent tears because they didn't want to impose it on us, but we would hear them. We would hear them with other survivors talking about what happened. So 1.5 million Armenians at least died. Um, and and then we were kind of reborn, and here I am today. And as a documentarian, as a producer and director by training and by education, I was working in nonfiction television and producing shows for networks and cable TV and so forth. Um, and loved what I did because it was always about storytelling and always about learning about people's stories and places and so forth. And it was always in me that I have to tell our story. And I went several years ago back to historic Armenia, which is Eastern Turkey. The eastern part of Turkey, modern day Turkey, is what Armenia used to be. And my father, Richard Hovhannissian, who's a historian and has spent his life teaching the Armenian story at UCLA, he and I, with a small group, ventured back to our homeland. I needed to find the villages and the birthplaces that my grandparents, Khunguhi and Hovagim and Kaspar and Siun, were from. I had to touch that land. I had to feel it, face that pain in order to really begin to understand what we come from and from whom we come. And it's forbidden there to talk about genocide. It's a forbidden subject. They have spent billions of dollars trying to erase history and to deny that it happened, and to erase every trace of everything Armenian. And you can go to prison, or you could be hurt if you talk about the genocide. I mean, people there have been imprisoned for it. But we went, and as we were kind of plodding through these lands and hundreds of miles of them, everywhere I went, as much as they try to wipe it out, I would see little traces of things Armenian writing, ruins of monasteries and churches and crosses. I mean, Turkey is not a Christian nation. And I also felt like some of these people I would see, the Turks, I felt like, you're a person just like I am, and you're not at fault for this, and you're just living your life. And then other people I would see, and I would see in their eyes that I'd say it was your grandparents who killed mine. And so you have all these mix of feelings. And I had my camcorder with me. I went really on this personal pilgrimage to find home. But I always had a camera with me, this camcorder, and I'm not a camera person, and I'm not trained in shooting or editing or anything. But what happened is I met this Scottish explorer along the way, this soul Scottish explorer who was in this. I knew he wasn't Armenian. I saw him in an old Armenian home, and with my camera, I said, what is this man doing taking pictures of things Armenian? And he was not Armenian. He was not dark like I. He was fair skin and so forth. And I said, who are you? And he kind of was like, that's an odd question for you to ask. But turns out he is this Scottish explorer who has spent the last 30 years of his life going from the small town in Scotland to Eastern Turkey, what used to be Armenia, and documenting what's left of the vanishing traces of Armenia. And I found him fascinating because we grow up with this story. We are Armenians, but most people don't know the Armenian story. No, most people don't know about the genocide and about the civilizations that preceded it. And it took me a long time to do, but I convinced this man who doesn't like talking to people to let me follow him through historic Armenia. And what started off as a personal journey to find home, to find where my grandparents are from, and to really go home, ended up being this of this man who goes and he turns every unturned stone and documents it in every way imaginable, and has a relationship with those stones and with those ruins that perhaps no Armenian even has ever had. He cares for them. He sees these as, this is the evidence of the genocide, he says. You can't try to rebuild it, but you have to savor it. You have to preserve it. You have to embrace it and love it and touch it. And who comes to do that? Very few. So these stoic remnants, relics of our pasts are standing there shouting out, saying, come see who we are. Come see that we are still here. Come see that we, Armenia, were here and are here, shouting to be touched and rediscovered before they wipe us out for good. So I joined him and I started just shooting in my very lay, unprofessional manner, and without any sort of setup, because you're not allowed to be shooting. I'm not allowed to shoot that story. I could get in big trouble for shooting that story. But I was really just there as a tourist, and that's the truth. I just happened to meet this man, and all I'm doing is recording the truth. I am recording and documenting the truth that has been crying for 100 years, since 1915. Come and hear me. And I am a people person, and I found that while those structures and ruins were so important, that for me, I had to hear what the people have to say. I had to connect with those people. And while many of them have not been taught about the genocide, or have been taught that it was the Armenians who started it, or it was during war and it was just a casualty of World War I, which it wasn't. It was premeditated, and it was a very sophisticated plan to send the Armenians off to their death in the deserts of Deir Zor of Syria, where hundreds of thousands of them starved and were thirsted to death and were murdered. The men were taken and killed outright. It's documented all over the world, in all the archives for all to see. But so it was. But I had to hear what the people had to say. And I was I shocked? I was surprised that some people would say, I don't know. Some people would say, oh, the Armenians, they're gone. But some people, at the risk of their own lives, said, yes, there was a genocide here. Yes, the Armenians lived here. We lived with the Armenians. And my grandmother used to tell me, this is what happened. Some people live with it in such a painful way that it's almost burning them, killing them inside. That they are the descendants of those who did those unspeakable things and committed those unspeakable crimes. And Kurds who are today being tortured there and in a very bad state, they're Kurds who were part of the genocide and killing the Armenians. The Turks used the Kurds to kill the Armenians. They're saying now, one said to me, my grandfather killed 12 Armenians, and my grandmother said to him, you kill one more and I am leaving you. And this man, this grandson, spends his life almost repenting for the misdeeds of his ancestors. So what I found was humanity in the face of inhumanity there. I found people, I found inhumanity, I found wounds unhealed. I found souls crying. I found blood and sweat of my people there, and the ruins of my grandparents' villages. Nothingness, nothingness. A donkey in one of them. But I also found, to my surprise, people who had spent their whole lives hiding within them the fact that they had Armenian blood running through them, that their grandparents had to convert to Islam in order to be saved, or other stories. And these are hidden Armenians who now, living in Turkey, are hungry to find their Armenian identity and to connect with the Armenians of the world. And that's kind of our, to me, our kind of our living connection to those lands and to our past. And gives me some feeling of hope within, that it is not all said and done, that we still, and I do feel that I belong there. But this film, which is about as long as how long I've spoken right now, takes the viewer on that journey, that very unexpected and very emotional and not Armenian, human journey of what happens when a crazy xenophobic government or leader is allowed to carry out a plan of annihilation, and what happens when the world allows it to happen. George Santayana, a well-known philosopher, said once, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to relive it. And it's happened over and over again. Hitler, before the Holocaust, said, who after all remembers the annihilation of the Armenians? And who did? And he used that as permission, as the door gateway to do what he did. And today, my people, the Armenian people, are facing yet again another genocide. I cannot have fathomed that 105 years after the first Armenian genocide, that almost effectively wiped us off the face of the earth, but not quite. Some of us survived, and now there is a small Republic of Armenia with 2 to 3 million Armenians and 7 million more all around the world, like I. And then an independent Republic of Artsakh, which is right next to Armenia, that has been Armenia since age immemorial, since time immemorial, for thousands of years, that in the early 1920s was kind of granted by Stalin to Azerbaijan. But they lived independently, and when the Soviet Union fell apart, or before even the Soviet Union fell apart, Artsakh, the 90% Armenians of Artsakh, declared their independence. They've lived there, they've thrived there, and now on September 27th, 2020, Azerbaijan, with Turkey, 90 million strong, have now attacked a small independent Republic of Artsakh of 150,000 Armenians living peacefully on their historic lands, and are effectively, with billion-dollar military monster machines and drones, trying to rid Artsakh of all Armenians. They've all essentially been displaced again, and they are now also targeting Armenia. The unthinkable is happening again, and the Armenians are being literally fighting for their right to live, for their existence. And the world is allowing it to happen. It's the genocide reborn. And it is extremely painful to be witnessing, especially in this age where we all see everything. Nothing is left unseen. But Armenia is not powerful enough. Maybe our voices don't matter enough, but I say they do because they're the human voice. Our voice, the Armenian voice, is the voice of every other people who has been disserved, who has been the recipient of injustice, who has been the subject, the object of genocide. And it's happening all over the world today. And it matters to everyone. And the terrorism that we're seeing now in Armenia and Artsakh, which is a continuation of what we saw in historic Armenia in the Ottoman Empire in 1915, which in the scheme of things is not a long time. It's a blink of an eye. But it's happening in our own country. There are terroristic attacks happening in our own country. It's happening throughout Europe. This craziness has to stop, and it has to be more than politics, more than about might, more than about politics, more than about money. It has to be about people caring about the human race and our ability to live and thrive together and peacefully forever. So you got your one question in, I guess, and I apologize for going on and on, but this is our story. This is our life. This is a struggle for truth, a struggle for what's right, and a struggle for humanity. And it can only be done when people open their eyes, open their hearts, express their voices, and become a part of this human struggle.
And I didn't need to ask a question that whole time. I was gonna, and exactly, and you're pointing out it's a human story, and until the global community is better educated through films like yours, until people realize how frequently genocides have happened and are happening right now. They're happening right now in China. It's happening in Africa,
Yes.
and it's so easy for people to think of it as that community's problem and not humanity's problem. So
You're
that is actually one reason why I think your a film like yours is so important for people to get educated. I don't remember when friends educated me, but if I didn't live in Los Angeles and associate with the friends from the Armenian community, I learned it from people, not in school.
right.
Yeah. And
Well,
I was just gonna, but as far as the film festival goes, I did want to ask you if you were you recording all the time. Would there have been a documentary without the Scottish gentleman, or did he actually push you over the edge to make a documentary?
I've always wanted to tell our story. And for 10 years, I was a reporter on an Armenian TV show. So I'd get our story out in all sorts of ways, but I wanted the world to know about it. And the TV shows I worked on weren't Armenian in subject matter. So I always knew I was going to tell this story. I just didn't know how it would happen. So when I went the first time, and now I've gone 4 times, I went with my camcorder. I wasn't really thinking that was going to become a documentary, no, because I didn't want it just to be a personal story. People tell personal stories that are really important all the time, but it had to be something beyond me. And it was beyond me. I mean, it wouldn't have just been my story. It would have been the people and places I discovered, and there were many along the way. But meeting this man, who, by the way, continues to go by himself all the time with a backpack and a camera and little more than the basics, and continues this summer he even did COVID time or post, recently, to continue to document, finding this man who doesn't, not because it's Armenian, he fell in love with these relics and these ruins and what the stories that they tell, not because they're Armenian, but because these are the roads that all of humanity has walked on and through and has to walk on and through in order to understand where we are and where we're going. He's actually not very happy with Armenians. He actually says, why don't you come more? You want your lands back. You want these lands back, but do you know what you're going to do with it? Do you know what remains here? Do you have a tangible, thought out plan? He doesn't condemn them. No, he loves Armenians in a certain way, but it's the fact that this is something much bigger than Armenia. This is civilization created and destroyed, and the world's not looking. And this is a repetition of history over and over and over and over again. And he says, if we know where we're heading, to know where we're heading, we have to know where we've come from. So no, I don't think the documentary would have happened like this without him. And because of it, I ended up, because it is the way it is, you can't have the crew coming and setting up beauty shots, and you have to just shoot what you can and keep going. I had a friend who had a camera along with me. He's kind of a cameraman himself, but he was sick in the hospital for 1 week in Turkey and almost lost his life, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, the point being, this was very down to earth. You get what you can and you keep going. You don't set up shots. You don't look for this or that. It is raw. It is real. It is organic. And you said earlier that I was brave to do it, but and maybe it is dangerous. Maybe I'm foolish in some ways, or careless. No, I'm neither of those, actually. It could have been dangerous, but what I feel and what I have grown up with inside me is the strength of my grandparents and their entire generation of survivors and those who didn't survive. But what they went through to live or die through, but in my grandparents' case, thank God, to survive those unspeakable horrors, to be kicked off in the nastiest of ways from their soils of thousands of years, from their homes, from their hearths, from their traditions and cultures and everything that they had built on those lands, and to start anew in foreign lands all over the world and to thrive again. If they could do that, who am I to be afraid to go back and touch the soil that we are made of and that we come from? I had to do it. I had to go there. And I have such a connection to those lands and to those people. And I feel like the hidden map are the maps that are underneath the surface of modern day Turkey. It's the map that's been wiped off the face of the earth. Because if you look at the modern map of Turkey, you are not going to see those Armenian names. They've changed them all. They've changed everything they can to wipe away history. But you can't do it when you have relics speaking the truth, when you have people like my Scottish explorer friend who says, I am documenting this for perpetuity, and when you have people like me and others who say, I do belong and you do belong, and I'm gonna tell this story.
Well, I happen to know for a fact you're brave. I get that it's so important to you that it's well worth whatever risk it is. But I've been to Turkey. I've actually, even as a tourist, dealt with Turkish police. I know that what you did was very brave because they do not. You were not. There's a lack of respect for the law at a certain level there, and the fact that if if any kind of local policeman or somebody who happened to be prejudicial or they could have, you were being brave. That's all I got to say is you were being brave for sure, but well worth it. And I think the Scottish gentleman is, I think, brave too, although I've wondered to a certain extent if he's spending his capital as a white male with an EU passport.
Well, I have an American passport, so.
Yeah. So that makes it safer, for sure, but not always.
No, and I also want to say that I feel for the people living in Turkey, those who I met um, with Armenian blood, not with Armenian blood, but the people who were brave enough to come out and say, it happened and it was wrong, and I am sorry for it. It means the world for um, for people who were on the receiving end of it, for the descendants of perpetrators to acknowledge the wrong is a huge step. Now, toward repair, toward some sort of resolution. I just hope that the people in Turkey dealing with the government and the leadership they have now um, don't retreat. I hope that they are able to stick to the truth, stick to the core of them that tells them we could do this. And you have to believe that in the end, um, truth and right and humanity prevail.
Absolutely. And they are, yeah. When you're there and you meet people living under an undemocratic autocrat, and there are people who are uh, not in the American political sense liberal, but they're liberal minded and they're citizens of the world. And I did actually meet a lot of Turks who would be as just as you said of believing in the truth and knowing that it happened and being ashamed and wanting to for the truth to come out. And right now they're living under somebody who basically steals elections every couple of years. It's a difficult time.
Not only about the genocide, but just for their own lives. I mean, recognition of the genocide, yes, and of the truth, but also they're living under a man who's taking away their rights and liberties.
Yeah,
Yes.
it definitely shows that if you don't stand up for the what's the term, you can judge a society by how it treats the disadvantaged people, the least privileged people in the society. That's how you can judge a society. And if you don't protect the people who aren't in privilege, that danger does work its way all the way through the rest of society.
Sure does. I'm hoping that while the film is not showing throughout the film festival, perhaps there could be one showing, but even barring it, the short trailer is up, and I'm really hoping to be able to share it with a very broad audience on television, and whether it be here or wherever those waves may be, my hope is that many people are able to watch the hidden map and to kind of dig beneath the surface of modern day Turkey to uncover all sorts of stories and secrets that are really, they've been waiting for a long time to be discovered and to be told. And as they are told, and I hope the audience sees that, they will see that those stories, unfortunately, don't end there, that they're continuing today to happen in front of our eyes, and we have to do something to stop the madness that's ruining our world.
Yeah, this current Turkish government is absolutely, absolutely acting completely immorally.
Yeah.
Because
They've made it,
Azerbaijan didn't have the wherewithal to do it themselves. So
no, they 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 have the open, Turkey has openly said, Erdogan has openly said that we will fight this to the end with Azerbaijan. It's their kind of little brother, and that they will support them in every way possible. And they are. They are, as I said, 90 million strong in people, money immeasurable, military, forbidden military might, using all sorts of things that are illegal to be using. I mean, there's no rule in war, I guess, but there are rules, and they are attacking civilian populations. They're using sulfur. They're doing cluster bombs. There's all sorts of just targeting civilian populations and babies in maternal hospitals and maternity hospitals and marketplaces, and the whole population is displaced yet again. And young 18, 19-year-old boys dying, to the point where girls are now on the front line saying, we have to defend our lands. They're living peacefully in Artsakh, Karabakh, as it's known, Nagorno-Karabakh by much of the world, but they were living peacefully. I was there 2 years ago, so beautifully in these lush, green, mountainous, simple life. And boom, September 27th, it all went to hell. And I made a little 4-minute video using, I've been making little videos and putting them on social media that I've just become active in, to show what Artsakh was, the people living peacefully, and show what is now. But September 27th, 2020, the day that Azerbaijan launched its attack on Artsakh, on the people of Artsakh or Karabakh, neighboring Armenia, they also launched a music video, which is displaying its military might in ways inconceivable. Their planes, their tanks, their people, and the singers are in military garb and having rifles, and the guitar player and the whatever, it's all about hate. And they're saying, it's hate, 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 destroy the enemy. We're gonna go get Karabakh. They launched this music video of hatred and destruction, and here we come. They launched that video. The government of Azerbaijan spent who knows how much money making that despicable thing, and launched it on the same day as they premiered their music video on the same day as they launched their assault on Armenians. Imagine. So
yeah, they plan. It was a plan.
yeah. So there's a video online, I made it. It's called The Master Plan. And it's intercutting their video with the people living peacefully in Karabakh or Artsakh, and then a montage of news reports of what happened or is happening.
But we can put text below this video as part of the festival. So we can, if you want, we can put a link to the video you made under in the text, so that I'm sure after hearing you say that, some people want to see it. So
It's horrible and telling. It's very telling. They want to, there is Azerbaijan, there is Turkey, there is Armenia in the middle. And their plan is to make a big pan-Turkic empire. That's what they want. They just have Armenians in the way. And Armenians are going to stand up and defend themselves.
And hopefully the global community will get involved soon.
I hope so, in an effective
because the reaction so far has been an embarrassment.
Yeah.
Especially from this country. I
Yeah.
know it was one of Obama's, he said it was one of his big regrets that they didn't make a formal acknowledgement of the genocide while they were in office.
I think President Reagan may have been the only one, but there has to be we are providing military might to Turkey. I mean, we have bases there. The United States has to do more than just say this is too bad and we want it to stop. You're helping them destroy a people. So
no, the fact I guess I don't want to get too political, but the fact that in our international relations currently will threaten to withhold aid from allies for bullshit reasons, and we didn't threaten Turkey immediately that we will pull the plug on you financially if you carry this out or continue it. The fact that, I guess, but it's because it's not even in the news. It's barely in the news. So our government reacts to the public pressure, and there's none right now.
Well, the Armenians have really united around the world and are trying to get the word out. I mean, we don't have the I don't know how many million or billion-dollar budgets that Turkey and Azerbaijan do to hire PR firms to lobby Washington and lobby the world to get out their own sick, wrong, lying narrative and to try to convince people. I mean, it is written. If you know a little bit about history and if you know a little bit about what's going on, and if you look at the evidence of everything happening, there is no question. It's in front of you, black, white, and color in every way. I don't want to become political either, but it's really unfortunate the world powers have not stopped this from happening. And I didn't intend to go here, but Israel, for example, who should recognize more than any other country the pain of Armenia, having gone through the Holocaust, having shared that sort of unbearable reality and existence and rebuilding from it. Armenia is really very upset that Israel has been selling billions of dollars of military drones and other equipment to Azerbaijan, and that is killing people. So no, it's not about politics and it's not about pointing fingers, but at some point, the people of the world and the powers of the world that are made of people have to recognize that they have to stop financing the murder of individuals and of nations. And you can't live as a world side by side. You can't live as human beings side by side in this country or in the broader world if all you're doing, or much of what you're doing, is feeding murder and feeding weapons of mass destruction and mindsets of that. I mean, among certain leaders that really lead to the demise of our world. It's not Armenian, it's not Jewish, it's not Cambodian. It's not, it's everything. It's everybody. It's everybody is a part of it. And we all have to realize that we all belong. And we have to stop killing each other. And we have to stop helping people to kill each other.
That is a very important point and well made. We should probably go. We're coming up to 1:30, so I have another one at 1:30. But yes, I have a dear friend, college roommate, who's a political science professor, and he never lets up on the fact that we're selling all this military. We're selling weapons all over the globe to people who are using it. Right now, we're funding Saudi Arabia's genocide of Yemen,
Yeah.
and we're just doing it for a profit. We're putting profits above lives, and I don't know. I hope that we see change.
To celebrate, to end on a light note, I want to celebrate, though, the fact that we Armenians and many other peoples around the world are thriving. We're not gone. We have music and culture and people who are creators and inventors and doctors and performers, and really we are the part of the fabric that makes life beautiful and that makes countries beautiful and move forward. So it's not all a sad story. There's so much to celebrate, and creation continues, and it will continue, and hopefully it's the camaraderie among people that will take us all even further.
Oh yeah, and the hidden map I think is very inspiring. Um, as illuminating as it is, I found it very inspiring. Really, how to see people be helpful to see people show you sites, to have Muslim Turks talk openly that yes, our friends and neighbors were Armenian. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you
to talk to
very
you.
much. Likewise, I appreciate it. And the best of everything with the festival, and thank you for including the hidden map and taking the time to.
Thank you for submitting it. I guess you're local to Sherman Oaks.
Yes.
So
Yes.
next year we'll be back in the theater. I really hope so.
Very good. I'll be there. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.